Right. First of all, this is the first time we've actually all been together in weeks. It's good to look around the table and see it filled with people. I'm glad we got the food thing fixed. We all know that, Friday there was a terrible thing that happened in France.
Yes.
And I didn't know if anybody had any questions. I started a brief conversation with Anik about it. But, in general, karma is karma. Mm-hmm. And people die for an infinite number of things, both worthwhile and seemingly not worthwhile. But death still occurs. And the circumstance that occurred in France was terrible, but it was still a very small amount of death compared to how much death there is in each day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
And we don't control the actions of others, so we need to be really careful about hating or drawing distinctions between ourselves and other people. That's really the key. Mm-hmm. Okay? What we saw occur on Friday, okay, has occurred in many other places at many other times, instigated by many other people. Atrocities have occurred by the people of France before, believe it or not. Atrocities have occurred by the people of the United States many times. Atrocities have occurred by the people of Germany many times. I mean, the world is filled. The British, oh my God. Okay, they conquered half the world. Do you think that they didn't do any atrocities in the process of subduing India, subduing Africa? I mean, I could go right down the list. Yeah. And so right now, because we're on one side and it seems like the bad guys are on the other side, there seems to be distinctions that actually are not distinctions. Okay? It's ignorance. All right? It's the absence of the Buddha nature.
Yeah.
All right? That's all it is. Okay? It's not a difference that carries over into there becoming a distinction. That's what I encourage you to remember. There is no distinction. In the Daishonen's Buddhism, there's no distinction between good and bad. Good and evil are the same thing. All right?
Yeah.
The Dharma nature and, the three evil paths. All the same thing. So I'm going to start by reading you a Gosho that I was going to read you anyhow 3 weeks ago. And I'm primarily reading this to you because of the last bit of content at the very end, and primarily because that content will deal with something that you'll all understand once I get to it, because it affects 1, 2, 3, 4, several of us here, okay, as it relates to our parents. So this is from volume 2. It's called What It Means to Hear the Buddha Vehicle for the First Time. Now, what would be the Buddha vehicle for the first time? We're Latter Day of the Law now. So it would be Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. I have received the 7 strings of coins that you sent from Shimosa province to me here in Kai province. These are to be used for memorial services marking the 3rd anniversary of the passing of your beloved mother. So that Daishonin has received an offering that's been... this is page 741 of volume 2. Pardon me. 741, volume 2, Writings of Nichiren Daishonin, What It Means to Hear the Buddha Vehicle for the First Time.
290.
It says 741.
Yeah.
It's Gosho number 290. Don't get confused. The Goshos are numbered and then there are page numbers. Okay, is everybody with me so that I can continue?
Yes.
All right, but understand that this is a letter back to somebody that he's acknowledging he's received a tithing or a donation, support, alms from them, okay, and that they're asking for the conveyance of his prayers for their deceased loved one, her husband, or pardon me, your beloved mother, excuse me. So he answers the questions that are actually in the correspondence he received. He says, question, there has never been anything to compare to the brightness and serenity of concentration and insight. Just what does this mean? It refers to the concentration and insight of perfect and immediate enlightenment. Okay, does everybody understand from the last time I read a Gosho to you during the course of what we're reading here? The differentiation of what is being said here. Don't forget what great concentration and insight is, right? What is great concentration and insight? Makashikan.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of the Makashikan? To perceive the truth of the middle way.
Yeah,
All
okay.
right, I won't wait for you to remember. All right? If you watch those videos enough, like me, you remember all this. All right. It refers to concentration and insight of perfect and immediate enlightenment, because that was the means for achieving perfect and immediate enlightenment in the middle day, right? As had been qualified as a practice by Tentai, right? But what was that actual perception of the middle way? The truth of the middle way, all right? That the non-substantiality and temporary existence are neither in themselves the truth. It's the combination of both of them into this middle way that is the truth. That's why it's called the truth of the middle way. The truth of the middle way is that non-substantiality is not a truth in and of itself. Temporary existence is not a truth in and of itself. Only when considering the two together do we come up with the truth of the middle way. Get it? Mm-hmm. Okay, the truth of the middle way is that there's no separation amongst anything or anyone. Mm-hmm. Okay? Which is the truth of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as well, correct?
Yeah.
All right? Okay? Mm-hmm. One aspires to understand the truth of the middle way through the Makashikan on the basis of meditation. Mm-hmm. We achieve the same understanding on the basis of recitation. Okay? So he says, answer, it refers to concentration and insight of perfect and immediate enlightenment, because that's what we're going for. And what is perfect and immediate enlightenment?
This moment.
The realization that you are the Buddha exactly as you are. Yeah. Because that's what the truth of the middle way is going to allow you to understand and perceive also. Right? Right. Question, what does the concentration and insight of perfect and immediate enlightenment mean, he asks. Answer, it is another name for the lotus meditation. What's the lotus meditation? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the Gohonzon. So he's saying all this stuff, same thing. He says, question, and what does the lotus meditation mean? All right, answer, it refers to the practice of the Lotus Sutra carried out by the ordinary people of this latter age, which would be us. There are two aspects to this. All right? One is the opening up and merging of the seeds of similar species. The other is the opening up and merging of the seeds of opposites. Question, where do these two terms derive from? They are taken from the parable of the medicinal herbs chapter in the 3rd volume of the Lotus Sutra. They come from the Lotus Sutra. The passage that reads, because only the thus come one understands the species, the form, the substance, the nature of these living beings. Of these 4 things, the first, species, has 2 meanings, namely, the seeds of similar species and the seeds of opposites. Regarding the term seeds of similar species, a commentary says, all living beings who possess minds have the seeds of the Buddha nature. When they hear a phrase of the sutra, they have the seeds of wisdom to perceive their Buddha nature. And when they bow their heads and lift up their hands in reverence, this represents the seeds of the good deeds needed to develop that wisdom and realize their Buddha nature. Now, did everybody understand the significance of that? Because he's talking about each one of us. He's talking about everybody that we talk to. This is the process. Regarding the seeds of similar species, a commentary says, all living beings who possess minds, all right, which would be all living beings, right, have the seeds of the Buddha nature. When they hear, so it's already innately there. Yeah. The seed is already there. It's not something that's planted that now has been given or bestowed upon the first time. It's something that becomes awakened. This Buddha in theory is a Buddha in theory because they already have that aspect inherent in their life. Yes. Okay? They just haven't awakened it. That's why that aspect is theoretical, because it has not been able to give rise to itself. But it's there. It's not something they're going to acquire. Right? He says, When they hear the phrase of the sutra, they have the seeds of the wisdom to perceive their Buddha nature. So it's the seeds of the wisdom that are actually planted when they hear the name and the words of the truth. And when they bow their heads and lift up their hands in reverence, this represents the seeds of the good deeds needed to develop that wisdom and realize their Buddha nature. That's to carry it beyond hearing the name of the words of the truth to progressive awakening, right? Because now they embrace the object of devotion and all the other aspects of practice that make one a Buddha, that lead to Buddhahood. You've got a perplexed look on your face, Waverly. Why? What are you not understanding?
You mean everyone
is the Buddha?
Have the seed inside already.
Already.
Yeah. So we just awaken.
We plant the seed of wisdom. We don't plant the original seed of Buddhahood. You don't encounter anybody that doesn't already have the seed of Buddhahood planted. What you're going to plant, and when I say you're seed planters, that's what I'm trying to make that distinction. You're not planting the seed of enlightenment. You're planting the seed of the ability to reveal that inherent Buddhahood.
So the point is revealed.
Of course. What good is it if you don't know it's there? It's like he was talking about the 10 people that were all had treasures, storehouses. But none of them knew how to get to them except one wise, one clever one, who was no different than the other 10. But the other 10 were at the point of starvation because they didn't know they had storehouses that just needed to be unlocked. So the clever one had to show them, he had to enlighten them how to unlock the storehouse. Didn't mean he gave them a storehouse. No. Each one of them had their own storehouse in the first place. They didn't need to be given anything. They just need to be given the wisdom to perceive their storehouse so that they could access it. That's what we're doing. Do you understand? There's a distinct difference. We're not, we're not gods that are out saving people. We're not saving people. We're saving ourselves through that process, actually. Understand that's repaying our debt of gratitude, which we're on the hook for because we took a vow. Okay? And if we don't do that, it's our butt. Okay? So the ability to do that is actually still, though we try to make it selflessness, it's nothing selfless. There is no act in Buddhism that does not come back as reward to oneself. So it's impossible. The more you try to repay your debt of gratitude, the greater your debt of gratitude, because the more fortune you will thereby gain, and the more benefit you will thereby have, and the more gratitude you will thereby have this sense of having to pay your debt of obligation toward. That's why you're always in each life driven to be the Buddha, because it's just piling up and piling up and piling up and piling up. Do you understand? All right, so, and when they bow their heads and lift up their hands in reverence, this represents the seeds of the good deeds needed to develop that wisdom and realize their Buddha nature. As for the seeds of opposites, the other kind of seeds, they are the three paths of earthly desires, karma, and suffering. All right, everybody knows what those are, right? Those are the three evil paths, right? Okay, they in themselves become. They do not disappear or vacate so that something else can replace them. He says, they in themselves become what are called the Dharma body, wisdom and emancipation. Okay? So the aspects that we would think lead to suffering are actually the same aspects that are the reward for eliminating delusion. The same aspects that are delusion are the same aspects that are the reward for the elimination of delusion.
Sorry, can you repeat the sentence?
Okay, I'll repeat the whole sentence. As for the seeds of opposites, they are the three paths, the three evil paths, we refer to them, of earthly desires, karma, and suffering. Okay? They in themselves become. In other words, without those three, we can't have the other three because they're the same thing. So if you were to extinguish those three, you don't get the flip side anymore. Okay? So it was never about getting rid of them. It was always about changing them to their true nature. It was always about flipping them to what they're supposed to be from what they've become through the distortion of delusion. Do you understand? Nothing is being added. The true aspect is being revealed. That's the point. The true aspect being revealed is always the difference between delusion and enlightenment. It's always the truth that there is no difference between anything or anyone. That's why we have to be very careful when we see evil people.
Yeah, this thinking is a problem nowadays, look.
Huh?
So,
I don't know what you're saying. You gotta
She's
French.
speak in complete sentences.
She's French, so that's why
I
she's
know.
talking
Suffering.
about
I
other
know.
circumstances.
Right.
So in this circumstance, I am looking at this.
Bad people.
No.
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 As
suffering. I look at this as suffering.
Yes.
yes, of
Right,
course it is
that's
suffering.
right.
It is suffering. But
If
then
I have the
how
Buddha
do you?
wisdom,
Why is it?
I should
Why does
see
the suffering? Hang on.
as a necessity.
Why? It's not a necessity. It's an absolute outflow of. It's an effect. It's not necessary because of some aspect in the universal life. It's a direct reflection of karma. It doesn't occur for no reason. It doesn't occur as a lesson given by a God. These people's strings weren't pulled by something greater than them that deemed that they should die, or that deemed that the others should become killers. Okay?
But we are one.
Yes.
So, and this part of this one is doing this.
Yes. Because it
So how
includes
do you react as being one and seeing a rotten part taking
of yourself.
a big,
Okay.
a big thing becoming bigger and bigger?
Okay. The thing is to realize that all the aspects that you want to control, we have this conversation quite often,
Yeah.
you have no control over.
Okay.
Okay? Other than attaining the wisdom that will allow you to reach others and awaken that wisdom in them, you cannot change the causes or the effects of other people because we're Buddhas, not gods. We don't supplant karmic retribution. We don't supplant karmic reward. Each individual gets their own based on themselves. And as cruel as it sounds, those people that die have causes they have made that result in their death. Those people that kill have made causes that will result in their death. Death is going to come to both parties regardless. Okay? How, where, when, why is karmic. Okay? The value or non-value of the death is indisputable. Okay? It's a waste of life, but it occurred for a reason. It didn't occur for no reason. Okay? Again, if we achieve Kosen Rufu, what will have been the ultimate driving influence of achieving that great victory for the peace and happiness of the people that are able to experience it because we persevered and won in that battle that never ends, by the way. It is a battle that never ends, okay? But if in the meantime we subdue it to the point that we see that there's discernible progress, what will that progress have been based on? The manifestation of the evil that motivated us to overcome it. It will not be because we were such great good people that we saw the Buddha nature inherent in all people and decided to end their suffering. Exactly. That's why they're never, ever inseparable. Because one is actually the motivation. Why is it that the Daishonin says all great evil is followed by great good. Great good always defeats great evil. Why does great evil get defeated by great good?
Because it's the same.
No, of course it's the same. But there's a reason why we can count on the great evil being able to defeat the great... we can count on the great good being able to defeat the great evil. Because the karma that the great evil creates by being evil cannot be overcome or cannot win against the merit that's created by the great good. The great good is always, the sun always lightens the darkness.
Yeah.
Always. Always. It may seem dark at the moment, but the light is there. We just can't perceive it. The sun didn't stop shining. Light didn't stop existing. This is what I'm saying. My point is that the entire point of the Daishonin's teachings is to never let the Sahe world disillusion us to the point that the fundamental darkness of not being able to see the Buddha nature inherent in all living things becomes obscured. This is the kind of event where you can start to go, oh, but those guys, how could they have a Buddha nature? That they do. That's the teaching. And as long as the words or the attitudes that come forth from your life express a difference, instead of still maintaining them in the truth of the fact that there are brothers and sisters, no matter how screwed up they are, no matter how evil they are, then we...
Great compassion, though.
That's the
difficult.
compassion of the Buddha. That's correct understanding.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, it's not popular understanding right now.
No.
Because right now everybody wants to stick somebody with something and kill somebody and get, revenge. But it never turns out that way. It's the actions of the individuals that are doing the evil that comes back to bite them in the ass. That's why they're always defeated. Hide and watch what happens this time again. And yeah, there will be people that take life in that process. It won't be us. That's a different karma, yeah. Who's the ones that die in all the wars that we don't fight because we're pacifists and we're Buddhists, we don't go there? People that don't have the karma that we have. Yeah, they were...
They don't have the same karma.
They generally were not Buddhists. You don't find a lot of wars being fought by Buddhists. There are not a lot of Buddhists in the ranks of the people that are taking lives on the front lines. Trust me. Hide and watch. Go look it up in history. At the same time, if a Buddhist's family is threatened, does Buddhism say, put down your sword? And no. What's Shakyamuni say in the evil age? He says, good men wear swords and staves. He does. This isn't a pacifist kind of a leave yourself unprotected, endure whatever somebody throws at you. No, that when the Daishonin was attacked, he and his followers always fought for their survival. They didn't we're afraid to hurt anybody, so go ahead and do it. That's why he ended up escaping. He only got away because they fought. He had his own disciples murdered on the spot in defense of his life. Okay, what happened that made the Daigo Hanzen be, carved or embodied? It was the Atsuhara persecution. Great evil brings on great good in many instances. Right? What brought on the democratization of Europe, the unification of Europe? It was World War II. What brought about religious freedom in Japan? The beginning of democracy in Asia. World War II. Yeah. These are all things don't lose sight of. Right? Today we're all French. Our hearts are with all the people of France. All the suffering that's going on there. All the confusion. All the senselessness. And it is senseless, but it's not without reason or cause, I should say, as a more clear word, is karma. If the bad people have done something now to piss everybody off to the point that they're all destroyed, karma. Then the deaths of those 120 people that might save 120,000 people, are they not martyrs or heroes in the truest sense? If you look at it from, what am I going to live my life for? What am I going to give my life for? If I can give my life for something that ultimately gives meaning to the life of other people, is it not the kind of life I want to live? So we quit looking at life from the perspective of our own comfort. What's convenient? That's common mortal delusion shit. We're Buddhists. We're not worried about when is this one going to end. I already know when the next one's going to begin, whenever I want it to. I'll either go into it as tired as I did this time around, or maybe I'll take a longer vacation next time. But it'll still be up to me. It's not up to something else. That's the power and merit that I gain in my life by being what I do. Okay? I'm not left with no answer. No answers. Not answers for all this crap. Nobody wants to listen to them. But they're there. So I'll keep reading And try and keep in mind, and if you have questions, stop me. He's saying, and when they bow their heads and lift up their, I'm in the middle of the second paragraph, and when they bow their heads and lift up their hands in reverence, this represents the seeds of the good deeds needed to develop that wisdom and realize their Buddha nature. They have to realize their Buddha nature. They have to make those seeds. Do you understand? This is an action he just delineated that had nothing to do but with the practitioner himself. None of this was given to him. It was all merit gained by their own actions. Then we get into the seeds of opposites, and we talked about they are the three paths of earthly desires, karma, and suffering, which without them, we wouldn't be able to flip them into the Dharma body, wisdom, and emancipation. It's because of those three paths of suffering that we have those three paths of enlightenment. The doctrine regarding the seeds of similar species is embodied in the Lotus Sutra, but portions of it are also to be found in the various sutras preached prior to the lotus. Now, what's he saying there? He's saying what I'm talking about is the perfect teaching. Okay? Because that's the only thing that would apply to that, right? The doctrine regarding the seeds of similar species is embodied in the Lotus Sutra, but portions of it are also to be found in the various sutras preached prior to the lotus. Only the perfect teaching qualifies as such. Myolo, of the four types. You remember, Tentai?
Yeah.
I won't get into the dictionary and divide it all up, but that's what he's talking about. The specific teaching, that's one of them, speaks only of the seeds of similar species and not of the seeds of opposites. Here the term specific teaching does not refer to the specific teaching in its original sense, but the perfect teaching as it is found in the sutras preached prior to the Lotus Sutra. I forgot I was going to say that, but that's what I just said. Or the perfect teaching expounded by teachers other than Tentai. Also, in the theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra, the 20 or more lines that begin, if persons make offerings to the relics, pertain to the whole of the opening up and merging of the seeds of similar species. Question, just what is meant by this term seeds of opposites? Answer, great concentration and insight. He goes to Tentai. What does it mean to hear the perfect teaching? It means to hear the doctrine. Listen to the question. What does it mean to hear the perfect teaching? It means to hear the doctrine that birth and death are none other than the Dharma body. That earthly desires are none other than wisdom. And that the bond of karma is none other than emancipation. The bond of karma, the bondage of karma is nothing more than the emancipation, ultimate freedom.
Emancipation.
Emancipation is freedom.
Oh, freedom.
So the karma is the emancipation.
I'll go through it again. What does it mean to hear the perfect teaching? It means to hear the doctrine that birth and death are none other than the Dharma body, right? That life is eternal, right?
Yes.
That, and why is it eternal? Because of that Dharma body that has no beginning and no end. Okay?
This part
That
is
earthly
okay.
desires are none other than wisdom. Earthly desires aren't the cause of all your suffering. Ultimately, it's overcoming those earthly desires and utilizing them when you meet the perfect teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that gets you to bring out your Buddha nature in the first place, right? That's none other than wisdom. Right? That's what allows you to manifest the wisdom, is burning the firewood of those earthly desires. If they didn't have them, that wisdom would never come forth. Right? Because you can't go from first stage to sixth stage like that. So you got to have that in between that gives you substance and meaning and understanding. Make sense?
Yes.
All right? And then the bond, and that the bond of karma.
The bond of karma.
What is the
Yeah,
bond of karma?
Okay, let's go.
What is the bond of karma? That whatever's happening is your karma. It's not baloney. It's not by accident. It's not something that somebody hung on you. You made it. That's the bond. It's inescapable. Right?
Right.
That's the bond. So I can extend it to say the bondage so that you can understand it even more. That's what it's got you tied up. Okay? But that bondage of karma is actually emancipation. It's absolute total freedom.
Why?
Why? Because it's only that karma that is life. And it's only that life that gives rise to the wisdom of what it actually is, and no longer do you have bonds. when you know the truth. They all disappear. You realize bonds were delusion.
Right.
I am the Buddha. I don't pray to Gohonzon so the Gohonzon can hear my prayer and then bestow upon me like a god. That's not what's going on.
So my next question is, you mean because the karma is what I made in the past.
The karma
So-
is what you made. Yes.
Yeah. So now I'm the only one can free the karma.
Right, because faith
At
is
this
the only
moment,
thing,
right?
simultaneity of cause and effect. I read it to you. You want me to go jump out and get... I read it to you again. I read it to you again. I'm sorry that I keep dropping that every week.
Yeah, but
whatever it
sometimes
is.
it's very...
It's very hard, hon. This is all very hard. None of this is... I have no idea what it is.
Breathe.
I have no
It's
idea what it
written
is. Yeah,
breathe.
something about...
Breathe.
Here's something about that, yeah. The essential phrase. Here we go. There we go. Yeah, 15, 15, 15, 15. Here we go each time. All right. I won't read the whole thing again. He's saying, this passage is saying that if in a single moment of life we exhaust the pains and trials of millions of kalpas, what single moment of life is he speaking of when he talks about that? What single moment of life has the capacity to free you of all your karma that you've already created?
To know that
The
you
moment
are
that you
Buddha.
perceive your true identity,
identity.
not theoretically, but actually, as the Buddha, exactly as you are. Not talking about it every week and talking about it every week, and you're still reading it and hearing it, but you still don't see yourself that way. Okay? That means you don't have belief or understanding yet. Actually. Right? Because if we ponder the meaning of belief and understanding, it means if you believe and understand this, then you don't perceive yourself as anything other than that. Right? It's okay. It's okay. Stage 6 is not an easy place to get to. It takes years and years of hearing the same thing over and over again before it's in your life. It is your life. Okay? So there's no competition here. All right? He's saying, this passage is saying that if in a single moment of life we exhaust the pains and trials of kalpas, we discover our Buddha nature, then instant after we have discovered that is Buddha nature, what arises in us?
Wisdom.
The wisdom to perceive what? Our true identity.
Identity.
Right. Then instant after instant will arise in us the three bodies. What is if we perceive our true identity, then we are the Buddha, right?
Yeah.
If we are the Buddha, then the three bodies have arisen in us, correct? Or else we wouldn't be there, right? That's what's qualifying what we are. We're seeing that. We're perceiving that. All right? That is our truth of the middle way, to perceive our Dharma body, to perceive our reward body, and to perceive our manifest body. To perceive ourselves as bodhisattvas of the earth, original disciples of the Buddha in his true identity. Buddhas, in every sense of the word that every other Buddha that's mentioned anywhere in any of these teachings is talking about, without distinction.
So at that moment, it will start.
At that moment, what he's talking,
Action.
this action is the action that now can never be reversed. Once you become a Buddha, that's not a Buddha in theory.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
You can never go back to being a Buddha in theory. Right? You will always be a Buddha in reality. And what stage of Buddhahood will you achieve within your lifetime? Sixth, no matter what. Period. But it can be that the sixth occurs just at the point of death, which doesn't give you a lot of time to really enjoy the goodies or share them with others. Although you will, again, hit sixth again in your next lifetime, and your next lifetime, and your next lifetime. So let's assume that through that process, eventually you start hitting that sixth stage earlier in actual life than the last moment of your life. But that understanding is what's going to allow you to maintain faith to the last moment of your life every time. Are you with me?
Yes.
Does it all make sense?
Yes.
For almost everybody?
Yes.
How you doing, Shufan? Pretty clear, right? How about you, Waverly? You understand? What don't you understand, huh?
I think I understand.
Okay, I think you do too, because we've been over it enough. You
Yeah.
do understand the concept. It's just, I'm not completely comfortable with, it's okay. That'll come. Okay, so these are, okay, I'll start with Great Concentration on page 742. Great Concentration in Insight says, what does it mean to hear the perfect teaching? Actually, have I already gotten that far? No.
Yes.
Two more.
Yeah.
Okay. It means to hear the doctrine that birth and death are none other than the Dharma body, and that earthly desires are none other than wisdom, and that the bond of karma is none other than emancipation. That's where we stop.
Yeah.
These are 3 terms, but they are not 3 entities. Does that make sense?
3 terms.
Yeah.
They are not 3 entities.
Right.
They are words.
They have descriptions of the same thing.
Description.
There is no Buddha of the manifest body that's also not a Buddha of the Dharma body. And the Buddha of the manifest body could not perceive the Buddha of the Dharma body that exists as their life, were it not for the Buddha of the reward body that also exists within their life. So the Buddha of the manifest body exists in their life. The Buddha of the reward body exists in their life. The Buddha of the Dharma body exists in their life. They are not 3 separate Buddhas inside you. It is you. Are you 3 things? No. That's why we sing the Buddha of the this and the it's all this. We're talking about the same thing. But in the teaching of Shakyamuni, they have actually been differentiated.
Yes.
But Nietzsche's got to put them all back in the bottle again
Okay.
to convey the correct teaching. Forget those expedients. Those were misunderstandings. That was delusion. The correct perception is what Tentai said. Why does he preface everything he says at great concentration at the beginning of what I just read? Great concentration in insight states. In other words, don't argue with me. Tentai said this. You've already all accepted Tentai had his shit together. Nobody's refuted this up to this point in time. This is taken as the truth, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I don't have to argue about these points. Let me just clarify them. That's what he's saying. That's why he starts with Tentai and then tells you what he wants to tell you. All right? That's why the quotation marks stop after, at the end. He says, this is all Tentai saying this. These are a single entity, though they are known by 3 names. You. These 3 have a single form. You. In truth, they are not different from one another, because they're you. Get it? When one succeeds in attaining the Dharma body, one also attains wisdom and emancipation. Since wisdom is pure and the other 2 are also pure. Since emancipation means freedom, the other 2 also mean freedom. And hearing all the doctrines follows the same pattern. All the Buddhist doctrines are incorporated and none of them are lost or missing. This is what is called hearing the perfect teaching. And did you understand that?
The doctrines are the same, so...
In their basic predication of truth, because all the doctrines in their fundamental... In other words, again, if you view the provisional teachings from the perspective of the Lotus Sutra and the truth of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you will find lots of perfect teaching dispersed here and there. When Myolo starts talking about a pebble, a speck of dust, when he's talking about the Buddha nature being in all things, does he quote the Lotus Sutra to say that? No, he quotes the Diamond Scalpa Sutra. Diamond Scalpel Sutra. Okay? When the Daishonin says that Shakyamuni says, have preached or will preach greater than any sutra I have preached, I have not yet revealed the truth. Does that come from the Lotus Sutra? No, it comes from the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra. Okay? Why do we end up with the threefold Lotus Sutra that includes the Immeasurable Meaning and the Universal Worthy? Because there's stuff in the Universal Worthy and the Immeasurable Meanings that's important. It's still perfect teaching. The Lotus Sutra doesn't have the corner on 100% of the perfect teaching. It's being bled out, but it's never been understood because it's only been presented in a concise form in the Lotus Sutra. But what is the perfect teaching? Right. Does that exist in the Lotus Sutra? No. So all the sutras contain aspects of the perfect teaching, which are all drawn forth. That's why I say over and over again, if you want to understand Buddhism, just read the Gosho. The Daishonin will make you an expert of what you need to know. The stuff that you'll never need to know, or that's completely baloney, the Daishonin is never going to lead you to even ever encounter that. But he's going to keep making you hit over and over and over again those things that are the correct aspects that Tentai perceived, that Jingyo perceived, that he perceives. So that you can perceive. So you don't get in an argument with somebody and you're saying, oh no, nothing but the Lotus Sutra. If it's not in the Lotus Sutra, it's not right. That isn't what the teaching says. It says without the understanding of the Lotus Sutra, it's all delusion. But with the inclusion of the Lotus Sutra, it all becomes part of the perfect teaching. There is no separation between good and evil, right? There is no separation between anything in this universe. Okay? Even the terrorists and their victims.
Yes.
Hard to perceive, but it is the truth, according to the teachings of the Daishonin. And this is what we have to endeavor to be clear enough about, that in times of crisis like this, we can still make sense of what's happening. Instead of going, shit, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the world's coming to. I know exactly what the world's coming to. It's been prophesized. It's all here in black and white. Evil people are killing evil people. What's that got to do with me? That sounds cold? I'm sorry. I can't stop the evil people from killing the evil people. But those were innocent people. This lifetime they were innocent people, but what cause did they make to be killed by evil people? Do you think that just sprang out from nowhere? Oh, but I couldn't see it until now. That's the whole point. None of us can see what our past lives were.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we look at the victimless person, why is the child born with 3 arms? Why is the child born with mental problems? Why do people kill people for no reason? Why is the person killed for no reason? It's all dependent origination. You were there at that time because you were there at that time. That happened to you because that happened to you. You want answers?
But we have to change it.
What will the answer do for you? Will it bring any of them back? No. Will it stop the evil people from killing evil people? No.
Should we say nothing?
Absolutely not.
No.
Of course. There's a difference between having wisdom and having the delusion of thinking that you have some capacity to somehow take evil away from people that have already incorporated it into their existence. You're not God. It's very difficult for Judeo-Christians to get this part of Buddhism. They all want to save everybody. How do we save people? We save people by awakening their Buddha nature so that they can save themselves, because that's the only way they could be saved. We cannot save them. Much as our compassion as bodhisattvas want to be able to have that capacity.
That is why a few weeks ago we talked about a friend. She got 6 cancer, right? She is the only one can save her life because she have to.
And in a great man, and the greatest truth of how can she save her life at such a stage of life is to try to have her life be for the sake of others. Whenever we devote ourselves for others, everything for us is already included in that. Okay? So, for your friend, the way, again, this life is going to come to an end anyhow. Yeah. It's like, how do you get around having to deal with this again? Or how do you have a different life next time? Do you think that those Yazidi girls that were living up in Kurdistan, that's not even Iraq, really. That was Kurdistan. It's been Kurdistan for a long time. It's an autonomous region. It's not run by the Shia government. Okay? These Yazidi women all had a perfect little life going for how many years in some of those villages? Generations and generations. Before some bozos come in and say, hey, babe, you my slave because you don't believe what I believe, so I can do whatever I want to do to you. That's the kind of thinking we want to get rid of, but we got to have something worthy of replacing it with, which means we have to understand what we're talking about. Just as importantly as having consideration and compassion for other people. Okay? That's the whole point. Wisdom is the only solution here. In the absence of wisdom, all you've got is sorrow, grief, and confusion, and regret, and all that other shit that doesn't have any power. Wisdom has power. Wisdom has the power of good. There's no such thing as evil wisdom. There's evil cleverness. But if evil were wise, it wouldn't be evil. True. Because wisdom says whatever you do is going to come back at you. There's no distinction. Okay, again, I had no clue I was going to say all this tonight, by the way. I really didn't think that. I thought I'd be through this by now. Okay. When one succeeds, and when one succeeds in attaining the Dharma body, one also attains wisdom and emancipation. Since wisdom is pure, the other two are also pure. Since emancipation means freedom, the other two also mean freedom. The hearing of all the doctrines follows this same pattern. All the Buddhist doctrines are incorporated, and none of them are lost or missing. This is what is called hearing the perfect teaching. This passage of commentary may serve as a model for the definition of the seeds of opposites. Question: and just exactly what does it mean? Answer: it means that the realm of birth and death is one of suffering inflicted upon our persons as a result of past actions. Not for any other reason. And I really, again, this happened way before what happened in France on Friday. I already had this all marked up and ready to read 3 weeks ago before we realized we were traveling 3 weeks in a row. So, it blows my mind. I hadn't even reread it. It means that the realm of birth and death is one of the suffering inflicted upon our persons as a result of past actions, and includes the 5 components, the 12 sense fields, and the 18 elements. The term earthly desires refers to the 3 categories of illusion, namely illusions of thought and desire, illusions innumerable as particles of dust and sand, and illusions about the true nature of existence. The bond of karma refers to the 5 cardinal sins, the 10 evil acts, and the 4 major offenses. The Dharma body is the thus come one of the Dharma body. Wisdom is the thus come one of the reward body, and emancipation is the thus come one of the manifested body. Did everybody understand that? That's a recap of what I was already saying anyhow. We living beings for vast kalpas without beginning have been endowed with these 3 paths of earthly desires, karma, and suffering. And now when we encounter the Lotus Sutra, and now only when we encounter the Lotus Sutra, these 3 paths become none other than the 3 virtues of Dharma body, wisdom, and emancipation. They become none other than. They are not replaced by. Hey, buddy. Sorry, I got a runny nose. Everybody understands? Okay. So, objection. Okay, what does it mean when he throws in objection? He's got question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. What's objection?
But.
When you're reading a Gosho and you see this objection.
But. No?
It's a but. He's going, in other words, with his wisdom and his mastery of all the doctrines, he says, if you've been listening to my argument so far, there is something you could throw at me here. And I already know you're dying to do it, so I'm going to go ahead and mention it for you so that I can crush it also. All right? So he says, objection. Water does not come from fire. Because what I'm basically saying is something like that, isn't it? I'm saying everything is from the same source without distinction, aren't I? Isn't that what I've just been discussing all this time? All right? So now the objection is, that doesn't make any sense. How can everything that's so opposite be the same? Okay. Objection. Water does not come from fire, and grass does not grow from a stone. Evil causes produce evil effects. Good causes call forth good responses. Such is the fixed principle in the Buddhist teaching. If we inquire into our beginnings, we find that the seminal fluid and blood of the father and mother, the two fluids, the white one and red one, come together to produce a single being. And this is the root of evil, the source of impurity. Though the great ocean itself should wash over us, it could not wash away this impurity. Okay? The inherent nature of evil that exists in our lives. And if we were inquire into the root of the suffering that is inflicted upon our persons, we find that it derives from the three poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness. Through the two paths of earthly desires and suffering, karma is created. And this path of karma is none other than what binds us to the realm of birth and death. Right? This is coming from the perspective that we could reach nirvana and be blown out and cease to exist. Right? This is all provisional. It's a provisional perspective he's laying out there. We are like birds shut up in a cage. How can these three paths of earthly desires, karma, and suffering be called three causes leading to Buddhahood? Right? Isn't that what you're all thinking too? It's a logical question. Since it's so logical, he puts it right in his teaching. So you don't ask it after you're done with the Gosho and you go, yeah, but how can that be? Right in the middle of the Gosho, he says, I know what you're thinking. Let me get rid of that. He says, you may gather together. I love this. This is one of my favorite lines from the Gosho.
You may gather together.
You may gather together turds, shit, dried shit. You may gather together turds and try to make sandalwood of them, but they will never have the aroma of sandalwood. So no matter how much you want to pile all this crap together and call it something that it isn't, it still smells like shit to me. Your objection is quite reasonable. Okay? And rather than try to address it, I would like to simply quote the words of Bodhisattva Nagarjuna. Okay, so now he's going to say, rather than me get into a big oral argument with you now, a doctrinal argument, let's just go back to the Tripitaka master Kumarajiva. I'll tell you what his answer is, and then are you going to question Kumarajiva? Then I don't have to worry about it. Of course you'll question me, I'm a common priest. Well, let's go to Nagarjuna, see what he says. He says, I would simply like to quote the words of Bodhisattva Nagarjuna, 13th of the Buddhist successors and the founder of the great teacher Tintai's line, who in explaining the word myo, or wonderful, in the term myoho, says it is like a great physician who can change poison into medicine. So, poison, Hindoku Iyaku originally comes from Nagarjuna. Okay? What is the poison that we're talking about when we talk about changing poison into medicine? If you're a Soka Gakkai member, you're thinking, I got fired from my job. Or some bullshit like that. That is not the kind of poison that we're talking about Hindoku Iyaku. Okay? We're talking about three poisons when we're talking about that. It is the three paths of earthly desires, karma, and suffering. It's not something as simple as a simple obstacle. Okay? As some people would say it is. All right? What is the medicine? It is the Dharma, body, wisdom, and anticipation. And emancipation. I keep saying anticipation. I mean emancipation. And what does it mean to change poison into medicine? It means to transform the three paths of the three virtues, the Dharma, body, wisdom, and emancipation. It means to transform the three paths into the three virtues, the Dharma, body, wisdom, and emancipation. Tentai says the character Myo is defined as being beyond ordinary comprehension. He also says life at each moment. This is what we mean when we speak of the region of the unfathomable. This is what the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present forms means. Now, does everybody understand what I just read? I'll read it again.
Is there a practical example you can give?
Sure. The practical example is to forget and eliminate all of your doubts about all of the teachings that I've already professed to you or that you've ever read or listened to from anyone else, and have complete pure faith without there being anything else added for you to accomplish that. That would be the practical lesson. Now, is that possible? Very unlikely. Because the devil of the sixth heaven is very, very powerful. And he's going to attack you the minute you should have that kind of fortune to be able to discern those things without any more effort than mishearing them. No. So this is actually the process of developing wisdom. Okay? Wisdom to understand and accept yourself for who you are. The Buddha exactly as you are. Not somebody that's got to get rid of aspects of their life or fundamentally change and be someone else. That's what this is saying. This is saying that the ingredients for the Buddha, pure and clean, already is your life. It's already there. There's nothing to add. There's nothing to change. There's only things to flip. And that comes from the wisdom to perceive what they really are in the first place. If you think there are aspects that still need to be changed or need to be gotten rid of or perfected, you're not listening to a goddamn thing that he's saying over and over and over and over and over again. To the point that I sometimes get tired of reading it. I've been saying the same shit for 7 years. Is anybody listening? Okay? This is not new. Yet, the looks on the faces, the questions remain the same. That's the difference between theoretical Buddhahood and actual Buddhahood. Because you all know you're Buddhas. But there isn't a single person in here that's actually attained Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi that would ask some of the questions that are asked. They're reflective of understanding it in theory. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no separation between those two. That's what this is saying. Isn't that cool? It's saying that if you've already slid into Dharma, body, wisdom, and emancipation, you're no different than anybody else that's still involved with earthly desires, karma, and suffering. You're still just as much exactly like them as they are just exactly like you. It still is the great Buddhism of equality. Wisdom doesn't separate or make you different. It clarifies and allows you to be compassionate, which is what your whole goal was in the first place. Master the teachings not for the sake of your own questions. Master the teachings for the sake of teaching them to those that need to know. Because you're the Buddha. You don't need to know. You came into this world already knowing. That's why you're such an easy flip for you. Trust me, there's a lot of people this isn't an easy flip for. It does involve lifetimes. They have not encountered the correct teaching. They won't encounter the correct teaching. I'm not going anywhere near Syria. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go do Shakabuku in Raqqa. Okay? Really? Sorry. Nowhere does it say be an idiot. Nowhere does it say, see if you can get your ass killed. No. There's a difference between do not begrudge your life and being an idiot.
And I have a question about, if the Buddhahood is already there, then we are Buddha, so how about this human revolution?
Because, again, when you say Buddha, remember I read it to you, the 6 stages? Were all 6 stages exactly the same stage? No, they were professed as being a beginning stage that was even actually just theoretical because it hadn't even been engaged yet, to one that I told you takes most uncertainly, in most uncertain terms, years to achieve. So once you've gone past 1, and the teaching says you cannot escape getting to 6. You can never go back to 1. What do I call you? I call you what you actually already are. You're now a Buddha. You're no longer, even hearing the name and the words of the truth and no further point than that. You're still the Buddha. In reality, even though you were the Buddha in theory, I saw you as the Buddha because I knew that was just an aspect that had not yet been awakened. Okay? So to perceive everybody else as Buddha is much more important than perceiving yourself as Buddha, although it's impossible to perceive everybody else as Buddha if you don't already perceive yourself as Buddha. It's a big chicken and egg problem. It's a big chicken and egg problem. That's why it's called Buddha wisdom. That's why it's called faith that unlocks and opens that door. Because it's not about being the smartest kid on the block. It's not about how much shit you've read. All that does is help you explain what you already come to know quite independently of all this stuff that you're reading. Because what you're reading now has no power unless you believe it. The only power it has is if you have the faith to believe it. Then it has meaning that can be tested. We go from religion to science.
But you have the demon of the sixth heaven, no?
Yeah, the devil of the sixth heaven is you.
Me.
It's fundamental darkness.
Yes.
Whose fundamental darkness do you see? Only your own. Everything you see is a reflection of you and your eyes. Which of the 5 eyes do you see through? Do you see through the eyes of a common mortal, or do you see through the eyes of the Buddha? All eyes see something. Is it the truth or is it delusion? That's the point.
The third eye.
Careful. There's more than one of them. Okay, so my point is that this is a process of growth as an individual that you will not encounter unless you are the individual that decides to be the individual that takes action. This is all about you. You know, that's what I was trying to say when we were, how do we fix the shit in France? We can't. You know, we can fix ourselves, which will fix the people around us, who will fix somebody else. Maybe one of them is a French national. Who knows? In the process, it'll get there. But it's not up to us to fix other people. We don't do that. We reveal the truth so they can fix themselves. They are the only ones empowered to do so.
Yes.
Okay? I can't impose my religion on other people. I can't impose my perspective on other people. Gene's on the other side of the camera as I set up today, so I'm sorry if I keep going like this to see you. So, do you understand? All right, so the key is that to understand that there's nothing wrong with you as you are, and in actuality, all the things that are wrong with you are really the reason there will be something right with you. Make a lot of sense? That's the truth. That's the truth. I'm so happy I'm imperfect and I'm screwed up. Because of that, I'm the Buddha. That's what Nietzsche's teaching is.
Yeah.
Anything other than that, and I'm provisional, I don't really exist. I'm not a real person. And I'd rather be a real person with problems that has the ability to bring forth true Buddha nature than be a story to encourage somebody. Because that's not me. Okay. Tentai says the character Myo is defined as being beyond ordinary comprehension. Well now, if we go up to, like what seemed like 2 hours ago, I was talking about Nagarjuna, and he's describing Myo, okay? Remember, that's where Myo, that's where I started here, right? Mm-hmm. And what Tentai is now saying is that if everything Tom just explained has you completely confused and you're not quite sure what to make of it, Tentai says, don't feel like the Lone Ranger, because what he just talked about is beyond ordinary comprehension. Okay? Yeah. And he also says life at each moment. This is what we mean when we speak of the region of the unfathomable. This is rocket science, but it's not rocket science. But it's the life of the Buddha that makes it something simple, and you view it all exactly the same way, and there's no holes, there's no discrepancies. There's no incontinuities. It's all reasonable in the way one would expect it to be. And then not understanding that, none of it makes sense because life doesn't make any sense outside of the truth. Anything that's not the truth will never be able to make sense of life. This is what the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form means. Understanding this is what being a Buddha is. All right? In recent times, the Flower Garland and True Word schools, having stolen this doctrine, treat it as their own. They are outrageous thieves, the most outrageous in the world, okay? Because Ichinen Sanzen really is only 10 ties. Question, can ordinary people really understand the meaning of this secret doctrine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he says, no. He says, answer, my own answer would be of no use in this case, since I'm the eternal Buddha and you're not going to take me. Okay. But Bodhisattva Nagarjuna, since you give him credit, but you don't give me credit, in the 93rd volume of his treatise on Great Perfection of Wisdom states, the fact that arhats who have eradicated illusions and earthly desires are now able to attain Buddhahood. This is something that only Buddhas can understand. If one is discoursing on doctrine, one ought to give a reasonable explanation. But in truth, the matter goes beyond comprehension. And one should therefore not engage in idle theorizing. How many times have I said that?
One should
Yeah,
not.
many times. Don't BS. Okay? Once one has succeeded in attaining Buddhahood, one will then be able to understand well enough. If you want to understand, attain Buddhahood. If you want to attain Buddhahood, chant for the attainment of Buddhahood. If all you chant for is benefit, what you want, you will never attain Buddhahood.
No.
The Gohonzon will kick you in the side of the head one day and say, hey, when are you going to start chanting about attaining enlightenment? Instead of just wanting shit from me constantly. I'm not even something outside of you, and you still don't understand that yet. Jesus, how long is it going to take? How many more years do you have to practice and feel like you're dependent? When you can be the baddest person in the room, independent. As for other people, they should have faith, knowing that they cannot yet understand. That's faith. What we don't understand, we have every confidence we will. When I encountered that, as I told you in my youth, I said, okay, I'll believe everything. Since I can't understand what the hell enlightenment even is, how can I make a judgment? This all came to me by myself, like within the first 2 weeks of my practice, because they're still talking about Buddhahood all the time. And I say, Buddhahood, enlightenment, I'm going like, what is that? I'm not getting explanations that are really like sinking in. So I'm going like, okay, this is enough to make me doubt. Because I don't understand what they're saying. What they're saying doesn't really make sense to me. Okay, since what they're saying is something I'm asking about that I don't understand, how am I qualified to know whether what they're saying makes sense or not? Okay, I will then take it upon myself to just accept the Buddhist doctrine according to what they're telling me. They say Nichiren says. Then I made this deal with the Gohonzon at the same time. I'll believe it all, but I demand to understand every bit of it that I don't really. I'll accept everything as the basis of how I go forward, but by God, you better show me. Because if I'm willing to do that, you should have the power to do this. If A is A, then B should be B, and C should be following that. This all makes sense to me if I can trust this. So I'm going to trust it. I'm going to go ahead and believe everything I read, but the deal is, I must understand it all then, eventually, in some fashion, in my life, in some way. These things that seem to be beyond the realm of anyone else to explain. And then I met Mr. Matsuoka. Like, within a few days after that. Mr. Matsuoka was in charge of the temple and chanted for nothing but wisdom for 20 years. He attended the priests at Myohoji Temple. There was no question you could ask him he didn't have the answer for. Then he filled my brain with all kinds of stuff. He said, don't worry about whether you understand this, but you must accept everything I'm saying is true. Oh, okay. That was my attitude, and that's what I did. So, and then he spookily sought me when he was at the end of his life and said all kinds of bizarre things. I knew it was you when I met you. All that spooky stuff. So, at any rate, I've had some very strange experiences. Can people really understand the meaning of this doctrine? My own answer would be, we go to Nego Jr. As for other people, they should have faith knowing that they cannot yet understand. This passage of commentary means that bodhisattvas who have cut off the first 11 of the 12 levels of ignorance in accordance with the specific teaching of the sutras preached prior to the Lotus Sutra, the great bodhisattvas who have cut off the first 41 of the 42 levels of ignorance in accordance with the perfect teaching, and even such great bodhisattvas as Universal Worthy and Manjushri, cannot yet understand the meaning of the Lotus Sutra. Whoa! And you think you should be able to. Did you hear that laundry list of people that cannot yet understand the true meaning of the Lotus Sutra? Why? Why can they not understand it? Yet I'm saying that you can.
Because we are in the later...
We are bodhisattvas of the earth, and no one that he just mentioned there are. Is Manjushri a bodhisattva of the earth? No. Is Universal Worthy a bodhisattva of the earth? No.
Nichiren has not reviewed with you.
Right.
We are in the later days of the law.
None of those guys were born in the latter day of the law. Okay? That's why he says they cannot yet understand the meaning of Lotus Sutra, because they haven't even gotten to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo yet. They're disciples of the Buddha Shakyamuni when he was the 16th son of the great universal worthy, great universal wisdom, whatever his dad's name was. Okay. How much more so is this the case then of people of the three vehicles of voice, hear, cause, awakened ones, bodhisattvas who follow the first two of the four teachings, the Tripitaka and the connecting teaching. Okay? Because then there's the specific teaching, right? Is the third, and the perfect teaching, right? And the specific is for bodhisattvas, right? And the perfect is the perfect. Right? Inclusive of lotus and nirvana. And how much more so is it of the case of ordinary people in this latter age? From this we can surmise that when the Lotus Sutra says that it can only be understood and shared between Buddhas, it is referring to the fact that it teaches that even for people of the two vehicles who are depicted in the sutras preached prior to the Lotus Sutra as having reduced the body to ashes and annihilated consciousnesses, the three paths of earthly desires, karma, and suffering are in themselves the Dharma body, wisdom, and emancipation. We may also say that since even people of the two vehicles can attain Buddhahood, this must also be true for bodhisattvas and for ordinary people. Only makes sense, right? That is why Tentai states the sense organs of people of the two vehicles have become defective and can never be restored to their proper function. Therefore, it is said that such people have been poisoned. But when the Lotus Sutra predicts that these people will eventually attain Buddhahood, the poison is changed into medicine. Therefore, the treatise says that the various other sutras are not secret teachings, but the Lotus Sutra is teaching. Myolo notes that in this passage, the word treatise refers to the great perfection of wisdom. Question: what benefit do we gain by hearing this doctrine that you're saying we don't understand? And don't freak out if we don't understand. Answer: this is what it means to hear the Lotus Sutra for the first time, Myolo says. He says, okay, what benefit do we gain? We didn't understand any of it. And what Myolo says is that this is what it means to hear the Lotus Sutra for the first time. That's the benefit. You've now encountered it. It doesn't matter if you didn't understand any of it. No one understands it on the first pass. It's not about understanding of it. That never was the point. It's about accepting and upholding it. It's about having faith in it. That doesn't come from just hearing it. That comes from practicing it. That comes from trusting it. That comes from encountering it and utilizing that encounter for the sake of the advancement of our own Buddhahood that is not separate from any other Buddhahood. Right? He says, if one has faith, that's what it boils down to. Yolo says, if one has faith in the teachings that the three paths of earthly desires, karma, and sufferings are none other than the three virtues of Dharma, body, wisdom, and emancipation. He's saying, if one has faith in this teaching, because that's what this teaching is saying. It's not about specifically those three equals this three. It's that this teaching says those three are this three. Okay? And the only way you're ever going to perceive these three as being those three is faith, because it doesn't make any sense that you're going to make sense of it. Do you follow?
Yes.
It's why faith is only way. If it's got to make sense, it'll never make sense. Faith is the only thing that allows it to make sense. Okay? So you can't go for faith for sense first. He says, sufferings are none other than the three virtues of Dharma, body, wisdom, and emancipation. Then one can cross the two rivers of transmigration. Only because you had faith, because that unlocked your true Buddha nature. Okay? Do you understand? That's when the three evil paths that have always been there just flipped forever, as in the OTT saying, in a single instant, we extinguish all the sufferings of kalpas and kalpas. Then rise in an instant after instant the three bodies. Okay? To say nothing of making one's way in the threefold world. And this is why I really 3 weeks ago picked this Gosho, that we've spoken so long. What time is it? We're probably out of time, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right. And when ordinary people in the latter age hear this doctrine, okay, I'll say it again. When ordinary people, so that's people that haven't awakened to that state, hear this doctrine in this latter age. Okay, so people of the latter day of the law hear this doctrine. Not only will they themselves attain Buddhahood, but also their fathers and mothers will attain Buddhahood in their present forms. Not maybe, not might, not boy, you've gotten them really close. Have no doubt their suffering as common mortals has come to an end, and the beginning of the journey of the Bodhisattva of the earth has begun. There will be no lifetime in which they do not encounter the law. That's why they encountered you in this lifetime in the first place. Okay?
So listen.
The parents always give birth to the children.
At the same time.
To the
Not
Buddha.
only, my parents also will.
Absolutely, even though they're Amitofu, dear. Don't worry about it. Amitofu, don't worry about it, dear. Christian as shit. Don't worry about it. Them, we don't have to worry about.
Okay.
Them, they're too close to us to escape our influence. And our influence is all that will take for the three bodies to arise in their own.
Just like gravity.
Exactly. Okay? He says, and when ordinary people in the latter age hear this doctrine, not only will they themselves attain Buddhahood from stage 2 to stage 6 as that occurs, not instantaneously. It's not like they heard this doctrine, they became 6th stage, level 6, but they are already the Buddha in that they've already engaged a path that will end up ultimately being stage 6. Do you understand?
But that doesn't
They
mean,
cannot be thrown off of it.
But that doesn't mean they begin to practice.
Not
No,
necessarily.
eventually.
No, hearing the name and the words of the truth isn't practicing.
No.
But it's entering a karmic stage where you will never have another lifetime where you don't hear the name and the words of the truth, and you get the opportunity to keep going. Keep going. That's what the poison drum relationship is. Rather than going through it in a lifetime. It takes them lifetime. Maybe they go Titan. What about all the people that chant and go Titan? Are they lost forever?
Nope.
Not a single one. There's no such thing as ever being lost once you chant the Daimoku. No matter what you do. yeah, you got to go suffer the effect of the cause. But you will always, it's like a very strong rubber band. You will eventually be pulled right back. Okay? You have to go where the inertia of this energy transfer was taking you to the point that the rubber band stretched as far as it was supposed to stretch. Because the energy at the beginning is what created that measurement that would ultimately manifest as something that's discernible. It's a point, but it'll always spring back. It'll never go infinitely in the wrong direction. It will always spring back. Even the wardens of hell. And he's saying that because of this effect being automatic for our mom and dad, that this is the highest expression of filial devotion. So we can't be better kids to our mom and dad than to allow them to have Buddhahood just because we attained it ourselves. Okay? As I am not well, I will not go into greater detail, but we'll write again another time. Nichiren. And I'm sorry I took the whole time just reading this Gosho, but I think you got something out of it. I didn't think it would correlate as much as it did, but it did. Strange. All right, so then next week we'll start by reading chapter 16. And then as soon as we do 16, I'm going to go into another Gosho and read you the importance of the moment of death, which is here somewhere. And then I'll read 17. Because 17 is like, woo, very cool. So anybody that wants to get ahead of the game and go and read the importance of the moment of death, 297 is a few Gosho. I'll tell you the other great, on the importance of the expedient means and lifespan chapters is also a great Gosho as long as you're going to go through them. All of these are good Goshos.
Would you like just post the link to the line and I can post to the Facebook?
Okay, I will give you those links later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.